Rest. This is what every heart seeks, even if it cannot put it into words. There is a yearning deep inside, quiet but persistent, that longs to lay down every burden and simply feel safe, if only for a moment. In the silence before dawn, when the world is still wrapped in darkness and the worries of the day press in, this longing becomes even sharper, like a silent plea rising from the center of the soul. The world is rarely silent. Its noise finds a way to creep through every wall, every shield, every brave face put on for others. Yet beneath all this, the desire for a safe place to rest is universal, something every human being understands without needing to be taught. When life becomes overwhelming and uncertainty clouds the horizon, the heart grows weary. Even the strongest spirit can feel battered by the constant demands of existence, the expectations of others, the unknowns of tomorrow, and the doubts that whisper late at night. In these moments, it is not victory or achievement that is most needed, but shelter, a space where worries lose their grip and the soul is allowed to simply be. It is in this fragile state that a new awareness begins to dawn, as if someone, gentle and attentive, is quietly watching over everything. This is the moment when the image of the shepherd steps into focus. Not the shepherd of fairy tales or distant paintings, but a presence that is intimately close, someone who knows the landscape of every fear and every hidden hope. This shepherd does not rush or make grand promises. Instead, there is a sense of steady patience, a willingness to wait for the heart to find its way to trust. The presence is felt in small, almost unnoticeable ways. A breath of comfort in the middle of a panic, a whisper of calm that cuts through the noise, a subtle assurance that whatever storms may rage outside, there is a safe enclosure here. Within this embrace, safety becomes more than a word. It is a sensation that wraps itself around the spirit, warming even the coldest doubts. The shadows that once seemed overwhelming now lose some of their power, not because the world has changed, but because the way of seeing it has shifted. The shepherd's care is not loud or demanding. It is more like a quiet song carried on the wind, a promise that even in the midst of chaos, someone is holding watch, someone is standing guard through the night. As time passes in this haven, the soul begins to relax. It is not the sudden disappearance of problems that brings relief, but the quiet realization that they do not have to be faced alone. There is a sense that every sigh, every silent tear, every trembling thought is noticed and cared for. The heart, so often guarded and wary, begins to soften, opening just a little more to the possibility of real peace. In this place, it is safe to hope again, not because everything is perfect, but because there is finally space to breathe, to gather strength, to believe that things can be different. The world outside may continue to swirl with noise and uncertainty, but inside, the experience of peace starts to take root. It becomes a gentle certainty, growing slowly but surely, that rest is not a fleeting visitor, but a companion willing to stay. The mind, once crowded with worries, finds small moments of quiet, as if each one is an invitation to step deeper into safety. The body, always ready to tense and brace for impact, learns the unfamiliar sensation of letting go. This peace is not about isolation or escape. It is about the presence of someone who truly cares. The shepherd's attention is unwavering, unhurried, never turning away even when the heart doubts its own worthiness. With every passing hour, the assurance grows that this safety is not earned or deserved. It is simply given, freely and generously, as a gift for all who would accept it. Every quiet moment, every gentle touch, every silent act of care becomes a building block for trust, constructing a shelter that no storm can tear down. The heart starts to notice the small details, the softness of light at dawn, the cool hush of early morning, the distant melody of birds that signals a new beginning. These moments are not grand, but they are enough. Each one is a reminder that the world, even with all its challenges, still holds beauty, still offers places of tranquility waiting to be discovered. In these glimpses there is hope, a hope that is not crushed by hardship, but refined by it, a hope that survives because it is rooted in something deeper than circumstance. As the hours stretch on, the understanding settles in. True rest does not come from the absence of problems, but from the presence of care. The shepherd's watchful eye never closes, never grows weary, never fails. It is this assurance that transforms the space from a simple refuge into a sanctuary, a place where fears can be named and released, where every breath feels lighter, where the future holds promise instead of threat. So the journey into rest begins, not as an escape from reality, but as a return to something essential. The shepherd leads the way, gentle and sure, guiding the heart through uncertainty into peace. It is a journey marked not by distance, but by depth, a movement inward to the place where all striving ceases and the soul finds what it has always longed for: rest that endures, peace that holds, and the quiet, powerful presence of one who truly cares. The search for safety, for calm, for restoration is not in vain. Here, in the quiet, the heart learns what it means to be at home. There is a certain kind of silence found only beside still waters, a silence that is not empty but full, alive with the subtle energy of restoration. Here, the world slows down, and the heart, so often battered by the tides of daily worries, finds itself enveloped in an atmosphere that is almost sacred. The surface of the water is untroubled, reflecting sky and light, offering the soul its own reflection, a gentle invitation to pause, to linger, to simply exist without expectation or fear. At the edge of these waters, the mind sheds its heavy coat of old anxieties. The constant rush and clamor that fill the hours begin to seem distant, fading into the background as something quieter and more honest rises to the surface. These moments beside the gentle current are not simply a respite from exhaustion. They are a vital part of what it means to be human. Everyone, no matter how strong or determined, reaches a point where inner resources run dry. In these times, the need for renewal becomes undeniable, a thirst that cannot be quenched by distraction or achievement, but only by something deeper. The symbolism of still waters runs through every tradition, every story of hope and healing. In this place, restoration is not forced but offered. There is no pressure to perform, no expectation to fix everything at once. The soul is given permission to rest, to let the tension fall away, to recover its natural rhythm. This is not an escape, but a return to what is most essential, a gentle remembering that within each person there is a wellspring of strength waiting to be uncovered. Faith, in moments like these, becomes more than a distant idea. It is a living stream, clear and cold, that revives the weary spirit. There is a kind of freshness that arrives with trust, not the naive belief that troubles will vanish, but the deeper confidence that even in the midst of hardship, there is always a source of comfort available. Each breath taken beside the water is an active trust, a silent acknowledgement that rest is allowed, that healing is possible, and that something good can be drawn from the stillness. As the body relaxes and the mind grows calm, a new clarity emerges. Worries that once seemed overwhelming shrink to their true size, and the future, once hazy and uncertain, begins to take shape. The gentle sound of water becomes a quiet companion, a reminder that life itself is always moving, always being renewed. Every cell seems to come alive with this energy, every thought softened by the cool touch of hope. It is here, in the presence of such peace, that the first hints of a new journey begin to reveal themselves. The waters do not merely offer a place to rest, they also mark the beginning of a path. There is an invitation, subtle but insistent, to move forward, to leave behind the patterns that no longer serve, to explore what lies beyond the safe harbor of the familiar. This is not a journey of frantic striving, but one of purpose, guided by a sense that something greater is calling. The way ahead is not always clear. Sometimes the path disappears into mist or bends out of sight, but the memory of the still waters remains. It lingers as a quiet strength, a secret reservoir to draw upon when the road grows rough. Each step taken away from the water's edge is a step toward becoming whole, an acceptance that the story is not finished, that renewal is not a single moment, but an unfolding process. Through it all, faith is the compass, pointing gently toward hope. It reminds the soul that no matter how far one travels or how weary the feet become, the possibility of restoration is never lost. The stillness found beside quiet waters becomes a promise, woven into every heartbeat, a promise that life's journey, with all its twists and turns, is not only survivable, but beautiful, so long as one remembers where to find refreshment when the spirit grows tired. And so the walk begins, not with grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but with a simple trust in the presence of renewal, the faith that each pause by the waters brings the strength to go on. The path stretches out, winding forward into the unknown, and with every step, the memory of peace remains close, quietly guiding the way. There comes a time when even the brightest morning cannot keep the shadows at bay, when the path that once seemed gentle suddenly descends into a valley where the light fades and silence becomes heavy. To walk through such a place is to feel exposed, uncertain, and strangely small. Every step seems to echo against unseen walls, and the once familiar world transforms into something foreign, a landscape marked by shifting forms, vague threats, and the chilling touch of the unknown. The Valley of Shadow is not just a place in the world, it is a season of the heart. It arrives without warning, sometimes as a slow gathering of clouds, other times as a sudden plunge. Here, doubts become louder, their voices sharper, whispering that perhaps safety was only an illusion, that every comfort is temporary. The ordinary fears, of loss, of not being enough, of failing those who depend on you, grow bolder, stretching long fingers into every corner of the mind. The presence that felt so close by the quiet waters can feel impossibly distant in the dimness, as if trust itself has become a memory. Moving through this valley is not about overcoming fear by sheer force of will. It is about recognizing fear's shape, looking it in the eye and naming it for what it is. Sometimes fear takes the form of loneliness, an ache that pulses with each heartbeat, a reminder that even surrounded by people, one can feel profoundly alone. Other times, it is the anticipation of pain, the anxiety of what might happen if the worst comes true. In this place, imagination turns shadows into monsters, and even the bravest heart can begin to falter. Yet even as the path grows darker and the air heavier, there is an unspoken hope that persists. The memory of still waters, the lingering sense of being cared for does not vanish, it merely dims beneath layers of uncertainty. Sometimes it is just a faint warmth, a single ember of reassurance that refuses to be extinguished. This ember can be enough. It becomes the reason to take one more step, to breathe through another moment, to believe, however quietly, that the darkness is not forever. To journey through this valley is to discover just how strong and vulnerable the human heart can be. Every movement forward is an act of courage, a statement that even when fear threatens to overwhelm, it does not have the final say. The shadows may seem endless, but each step is a small defiance, a refusal to let fear become the only voice that is heard. And so, the traveler presses on, guided by a hope that sometimes feels fragile but never entirely fades. The eyes learn to search for any glimmer, no matter how faint, of light breaking through the cracks above. The ears become attuned to small comforts, a word remembered, a touch offered, the sound of one's own steady breath. In these little signs, a promise is hidden, a reminder that every valley, no matter how deep, is not the end of the story. Through it all, the journeyer is changed. The valley is not a place anyone would choose to linger, but in moving through it, something essential is revealed. A deeper resilience, a quiet wisdom, and an understanding that the shadows, for all their threats, cannot erase the light that lives within. Even as the darkness stretches on, the heart learns to wait, to expect dawn, not because the night is denied, but because every shadow is, in the end, defined by the light it awaits. Even within the deepest valley, where shadows press close and silence seems absolute, there are moments when the presence of another is felt so keenly that it cuts through the darkness like a sudden breeze. This presence is not always visible, not always expressed in words or gestures. Sometimes it is simply the inexplicable sense that one is not, in fact, alone. It is as if a quiet strength stands just beyond the edge of perception, ready to steady trembling hands and lift a bowed head, even when hope feels far away. Support often arrives not as a sweeping rescue, but as a gentle, sustaining force, a presence that reassures you are not forgotten. Sometimes this comes from a person who sits silently nearby, needing no explanations, offering nothing but their attentive companionship. Other times it is felt in the heart, a warmth that flickers to life in the middle of uncertainty, whispering that every fearful thought, every restless night is seen and understood. The heart, so prone to shutting itself away, is invited to open just enough to let comfort in. Faith takes on a different character here. It is no longer a distant ideal or a list of beliefs, but an act of trust in the reliability of this unseen hand. It is the courage to step forward, even when the ground beneath feels unstable, because a sense of being accompanied is stronger than the pull of fear. There is strength in knowing that, while the way ahead may be unclear, there is a guide who does not abandon the traveler to the darkness. The invisible hand is felt most clearly in the smallest moments, the breath that calms, the heart that slows its racing, the inexplicable peace that descends for no apparent reason. Sometimes it is only later that these moments are recognized for what they are, glimpses of care woven into the fabric of ordinary life. These are not coincidences, but gifts, evidence of a presence that intervenes not by removing every obstacle, but by imparting the resilience to continue despite them. Courage, then, is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move through it, strengthened by the certainty that support is close at hand. Every hesitant step is an act of faith, a declaration that being afraid does not mean being abandoned. The voice that once quivered with doubt begins to steady. The gaze that once searched the ground begins to look up. The road ahead may still twist and descend, but the knowledge that one is accompanied transforms every mile. In time, this assurance seeps into every thought and action. The mind, once clouded by anxiety, begins to clear. The spirit, once bowed under the weight of uncertainty, starts to rise. There is newfound freedom in knowing that it is safe to continue, even when confidence falters. The invisible presence becomes a trusted companion, a promise that no challenge need be faced alone. And so, with each new day, the heart finds itself less paralyzed by what might go wrong and more willing to step toward what might be possible. The shadows may linger at the edges, but their power is diminished by the steady, unwavering presence of support and care. This, more than any fleeting comfort, gives the courage to keep moving forward, one step and then another into the unknown, buoyed by the quiet certainty that no valley lasts forever, and no darkness can outlast the presence that drives away fear. There comes a remarkable moment in every journey when, despite the uncertainty that lingers and the memory of fear that still echoes in the heart, one finds themselves at a table set right in the midst of challenge. It is a setting that defies logic. All around, the presence of adversity is unmistakable. The old worries and adversaries, whether they are memories, inner doubts, or real voices from the past, do not disappear. They gather nearby, close enough to be felt, sometimes even close enough to meet one's gaze. Yet, against all expectation, this table is not a place of vulnerability, but of unexpected safety. There is food to share, light that glows softly, a sense of welcome that makes no demands and sets no conditions. The world outside may still feel hostile, but within this circle a profound calm reigns, a calm that is born not from the absence of trouble, but from the unmistakable assurance that one is cared for and defended even when difficulty sits close at hand. To face hardship head-on, to look into the eyes of those things that once seemed all-powerful, is itself an act of transformation. The sense of protection does not come from a shield that hides every danger, but from the awareness that whatever comes, one is not left alone to face it. There is a steady hand ready to offer what is needed, whether it is a word of encouragement, a quiet presence, or a gentle reminder that worth is not measured by victories or defeats. In this place, the heart begins to understand something new about forgiveness. Where anger and resentment once threatened to consume all peace, there now grows a willingness to let go, to see not just the wounds inflicted, but the possibility of reconciliation and healing. It does not mean excusing what has hurt, nor pretending that the past can be erased. Rather, it means recognizing that holding on to old battles only deepens the sense of conflict, while letting go creates room for peace to take root. Acceptance becomes a quiet daily practice. The table is open not only for those who bring comfort, but for the whole story, pain and joy, friends and adversaries alike. Each moment of care is an invitation to stop fighting what cannot be changed, and instead to receive what is freely given: nourishment for the soul, rest for the mind, and reassurance that even in the presence of struggle, one's value is undiminished. With every shared meal, every gesture of kindness, the boundaries of fear shrink a little more. What once seemed threatening now feels less overwhelming, as if trouble itself has lost its appetite for destruction in the face of genuine welcome. The experience of being protected is not about the erasure of every threat, but about the confidence that comes from being cherished, guarded, and truly seen. In this sanctuary, the presence of difficulty does not steal away peace. Instead, it makes the gift of security and care all the more precious. It is here, in this paradoxical gathering, that the journeyer discovers the freedom to forgive and the courage to accept, even when circumstances remain unchanged. The table becomes a symbol of resilience, a testament to the enduring strength that comes from knowing that safety is possible even where opposition lingers. And in this newfound confidence, the story moves forward, not with the absence of trouble, but with a heart emboldened by protection, forgiveness, and the steady light of acceptance. There are seasons in life when the heart discovers almost by surprise that the very things it once anxiously sought are already present. In the gentle glow of ordinary moments, the awareness dawns: abundance does not always arrive with fanfare or grand reward, but in the quiet fullness that settles in the soul. There is a richness in realizing that, despite the struggles and the shadows, there is enough care, enough hope, enough gentle guidance for each new step. It is a shift from longing to noticing. The cup, once thought to be nearly empty, reveals itself to be brimming, filled by the kindnesses and comforts that often go unnoticed. The taste of warm bread, the laughter that rings out unexpectedly, the simple beauty of light falling across a room. Each is a small miracle, a reason to pause and let gratitude rise. These are not just fleeting pleasures, but reminders of the deeper current of goodness flowing beneath the surface of each day. In the fullness of the heart, gratitude becomes both a response and a way of seeing. Every act of care, every word of encouragement, every sign of safety gathers into an overflowing well of appreciation. There is no need to wait for some distant perfection. Joy grows in the ability to delight in what is already here. The eyes become sharper, more attuned to the daily gifts that arrive quietly. A reassuring glance, the steady support of a friend, the peace that returns after turmoil. Such abundance is not defined by what can be counted or held. It is found in the freedom from fear, the deep breath that comes with knowing that one's needs are met. The heart, no longer fixed on what is missing, turns its attention to what is present, and each discovery adds to the sense of plenty. Even small mercies, an unexpected rest, a moment of laughter, the comfort of familiar surroundings, become part of a tapestry that weaves contentment through the days. There is a joy, too, in sharing this abundance. Generosity grows not from duty, but from the natural overflow of a grateful spirit. The hand that once clung tightly out of scarcity now opens easily, willing to give and to bless. Kindness, like water poured into a cup that cannot hold more, spills out into every interaction, touching others with the same assurance and peace that has been received. There is a quiet confidence in knowing that by giving, nothing is truly lost. Indeed, the heart grows richer still. The ability to find joy in the simple things becomes a sustaining practice. Each sunrise, each meal, each moment of stillness offers a new opportunity to acknowledge the fullness that life holds. There is wisdom in this perspective, a reminder that true abundance is rarely about gathering more, but about recognizing the beauty and sufficiency of what is already in hand. Even on the days when trouble whispers at the door, the memory of a full cup and a joyful heart remains. Gratitude is a steady light, guiding through uncertainty, anchoring the spirit in the assurance that enough is not a distant dream, but a present reality. And in that knowledge, each breath becomes a celebration of care received, of blessings counted, and of the quiet miracle that even in a world of constant striving, the heart can rest content, overflowing with thankfulness. There are days when the sky turns dark without warning, when storms gather on the horizon and the winds of uncertainty sweep through even the safest of places. In such moments, the instinct is often to seek shelter, to hide, to protect what is fragile, to wait for the world to grow calm again. Yet there exists a deeper kind of refuge, one that cannot be shaken by the fury outside. The feeling of being gathered close, hidden beneath outstretched wings, shielded by a presence both gentle and unyielding. The image of wings, vast, strong, enveloping, carries with it a sense of deep safety. It is not just about escaping the storm, but about finding peace at its very center. Here, amid the roar of fear and the rush of things beyond control, trust becomes a quiet sanctuary. There is something profoundly comforting in the sense that no threat, no force, no tempest is greater than the arms that encircle and protect. Within this hidden place, the heart learns a new lesson. True calm does not come from the absence of danger, but from confidence in the one who shelters. When the world grows wild, when the unknown looms, it is trust that transforms the experience. Not by denying the storm, but by daring to believe that even here, even now, one is held. The soul finds rest not by closing its eyes to the trouble, but by opening itself to the presence that stands guard through every gust and crash. It is here that the weary spirit can finally exhale, loosening the grip of worry and letting the tension flow away. The beating of the storm fades against the steady rhythm of reassurance, a heartbeat that says, "You are not abandoned." The mind, so often quick to imagine the worst, finds comfort in the memory of every past rescue, every time when, despite the odds, a way through was found. The wings that cover now have always been there, unseen, yet certain, ready to shelter again and again. This refuge does not remove every challenge, but it changes the very nature of fear. What once felt overwhelming loses its power in the face of unwavering protection. Trust grows, not from wishful thinking, but from the steady experience of being held safe through trial after trial. The presence under these wings is patient, never rushing, always inviting the heart to trust a little more, to rest a little deeper. There's a freedom here, the freedom to be vulnerable without risk, to hope without hesitation, the knowledge that one is guarded, no matter how fierce the storm, frees the soul to dream again, to imagine peace even in chaos. Every worry that once demanded all attention now fades into the background, replaced by the gentle certainty that, under these wings, nothing essential can be taken away. And so, even when the winds howl and the rain falls in torrents, the one who trusts remains at peace, not because the world has changed, but because the soul has found a shelter that cannot be moved. The promise of these wings is more than comfort. It is strength. It is reassurance. It is the quiet confidence that, whatever storms may come, there is always a place to rest, always a refuge waiting to gather every trembling heart. Night falls, and the world grows still, but the quiet outside is rarely matched by the quiet inside. When darkness settles, the mind, so easily distracted during the day, often turns inward, unspooling old worries and inventing new ones. The walls that offer protection in daylight seem to shrink as the unknown stretches out, and each familiar sound is swallowed by the hush. It is in these midnight hours that anxiety finds its voice, whispering doubts and magnifying uncertainties that in the sun might seem insignificant. Restlessness is a companion for many at night. Thoughts swirl with a persistence that cannot be willed away. The mind replays conversations, decisions, moments that didn't go as planned. Regrets and what-ifs gather at the edge of consciousness, weaving a tapestry of unease. The heart, which managed to be brave while the world was awake, now beats faster, caught by the shadows of imagined dangers and the weight of questions that have no easy answers. These are the hours when fears grow tall and patience runs thin. Sleep slips further from reach as each minute ticks by, and each creak or sigh from the world outside feels charged with meaning. It is easy in these moments to feel alone with uncertainty, to believe that the shadows will outlast the dawn, and that the sun might never rise again. Yet even as night deepens, something else quietly stirs. Amid the chorus of restless thoughts, there is a faint memory, a reassurance, gentle but steady, that darkness is not endless. Sometimes it is the echo of comforting words, a song once sung softly at bedtime, or a prayer repeated in childhood. Sometimes it is just the stubborn, tiny hope that the light will return, as it always has before. The spirit holds on to these fragments, even when doubt is loudest, nurturing them like seeds in frozen soil. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the quality of night begins to shift. The worries that felt overwhelming an hour before start to lose their sharpness. Breaths grow deeper, the pulse slows, and a kind of surrender takes place. Not defeat, but the acceptance that not every problem can be solved in the darkness. There is a decision, sometimes barely conscious, to trust in something greater than worry, to let faith carry what the mind cannot. The heart finds a measure of peace not by chasing sleep, but by allowing itself to rest in the possibility of a new beginning. And then, at last, the first hints of morning begin to appear. The world outside remains quiet, but the blackness softens to gray, and gray to the promise of gold. With the return of light, shadows retreat to their corners, and the fears that seemed so real at night lose their grip. The mind, refreshed by even a little rest, remembers the truth it struggled to hold on to. Every night gives way to morning. Every anxious hour is followed by renewal. Faith is like the dawn, not always sudden, but inevitable, persistent, certain. The coming of a new day does not erase all worries, but it transforms them. What was unbearable in the darkness becomes manageable in the light. The perspective shifts and hope takes the place of fear, reminding the soul that each night is temporary and that every sunrise brings another chance to begin again. In this gentle return of morning, faith stands quietly triumphant, the promise that, no matter how long the night, light will always find its way back. It takes a quiet kind of courage to admit that strength has limits. The world often celebrates those who never falter, who appear unbreakable in the face of hardship. Yet real growth begins the moment a person stops hiding their weaknesses and allows themselves to be seen as they truly are, fragile, uncertain, and fully human. There is a gentle power in vulnerability, a depth that can only be reached when the armor of perfection is set aside. Vulnerability is not defeat. It is a doorway. To acknowledge fear, disappointment, or exhaustion is not to surrender, but to recognize the truth of what it means to be alive. Every heart, no matter how resilient, carries wounds and scars that shape its story. When these hidden places are brought into the open, shame loses its grip, and the soul discovers that honesty is not only possible but freeing. The quiet admission that "I need help" or "I am hurting" allows the walls of isolation to crumble, letting in light where before there was only shadow. Far from being a sign of failure, this openness draws support in ways that strength alone never could. People are drawn to authenticity. There is a bond that forms when pain is shared, and understanding grows in the space where defenses drop. It is in these exchanges, quiet confessions, shared silences, the willingness to weep or laugh without pretense, that true comfort is found. Support is not always a solution. Sometimes it is simply the presence of another who says, "I see you, and I am here." As vulnerability becomes a practice rather than a moment of crisis, it transforms the heart. The energy once spent hiding flaws is now free to be invested in healing, connection, and learning. Trust deepens, not just in others, but in oneself. The ability to sit with pain without needing to fix it immediately is an act of resilience and active hope. It signals a faith that wounds do not have the final word, and that broken places can become sources of wisdom and compassion. The journey of embracing weakness is, in truth, a journey toward inner strength. Every time a tear is allowed to fall, or a fear is spoken aloud, the soul becomes a little more spacious. There is room for grace, for kindness, for patience with oneself and others. Where judgment once ruled, gentleness takes its place. The pressure to always be enough is replaced by the steady realization that worth is not earned by never stumbling, but by continuing to rise. Over time, the heart learns that the things it tried hardest to hide are often the very things that bring others close. Empathy grows in shared struggle. The support received in moments of openness builds a foundation strong enough to carry dreams, risks, and the uncertainties of life. It is this kind of strength, the strength to be weak, to be honest, to be seen, that shapes a person into someone capable of offering the same gift to others. In this light, vulnerability is not an obstacle, but a guide. It leads toward community, toward real understanding, and ultimately toward peace. The willingness to admit need becomes the beginning of transformation. The journey is no longer about proving invincibility, but about discovering the strength that flourishes in tenderness, honesty, and the brave decision to let others share the load. In the quiet space where hope takes root, the mind dares to imagine a world fundamentally different from the one known by tired hearts. There arises the vision of a city untouched by fear, a place where every doorway opens into welcome, and every street is safe for wandering, even in the darkest hours of night. It is a dream shaped not by naive longing, but by the deep conviction that transformation is possible, that peace can become more than a fleeting visitor. Within this city, the air carries the sense of belonging. Walls are not built to keep threats away, but to embrace and protect, offering sanctuary instead of suspicion. There is no need to look over one's shoulder or to guard every word and gesture. Trust has taken root so deeply that it blooms across neighborhoods, unafraid of difference or disagreement. The wounds of the past have been tended with care, and memories of pain serve only to remind how far the city has come. In every corner, the evidence of renewal is clear. Where once people hurried with eyes downcast, now they meet each other openly, exchanging greetings that carry real warmth. There is space here for vulnerability and for laughter, for the quiet rituals of daily life and for the celebrations that draw everyone into their light. The city's heart beats with the conviction that safety is not reserved for the fortunate few, but is a promise extended to all who enter its gates. The dream of such a place is not just an escape from the world's struggles. It is a vision that inspires action and perseverance. To hope for a city without fear is to commit to the slow, steady work of change, healing old rifts, building bridges where there were once chasms, choosing compassion over suspicion, and justice over resentment. It is a hope that calls forth the best in each person, urging the community to rise together, not just for their own sake, but for the sake of those yet to arrive. The architecture of this new city is not only in its buildings, but in the way people treat one another. Forgiveness is its foundation, hospitality its walls, empathy the windows through which light pours in. Every act of care, every meal shared, every helping hand extended, every moment spent listening instead of judging adds another stone to the structure of hope. Gradually, the city's old scars fade beneath layers of kindness and the strength of communal trust. Change in this vision is not a single event, but a constant unfolding. The city does not forget its struggles, but weaves them into its new identity, proof that light can emerge from the deepest shadows. Renewal comes in the small details, gardens blooming where nothing once grew, laughter echoing where there was once only silence, lives restored in ways no one thought possible. This city, without fear, is not just a fantasy. It is the embodiment of what can happen when people believe in something larger than their own safety, when they choose to care for one another with the courage that hope demands. It stands as an invitation, a promise that with enough patience, forgiveness, and resolve, even the most broken places can be transformed into havens of peace. To hold this dream is to carry within oneself a quiet, persistent light. It does not ignore the world's pain, but it refuses to let fear dictate the future. The hope for such a city gives meaning to the journey, inspiring the courage to press on, to build, to forgive, and to welcome the dawn of change. And in doing so, the heart finds itself already walking the streets of that promised place, where safety is not a wish, but a way of life, and the shadow of fear has finally been dispelled. Standing at the threshold of such a world, the mind is drawn upward, searching for meaning in the immensity above. The sky stretches farther than sight allows. Stars wheel silently in their patterns, and the vastness of the universe settles like a gentle awe upon the heart. In this moment of quiet wonder, every soul senses its smallness against something infinitely greater, a presence that both shapes and sustains everything seen and unseen. There is a kind of peace found only in the contemplation of what cannot be fully understood. To ponder the majesty of the Creator is to look beyond the boundaries of ordinary life, to feel the pulse of a wisdom and power that holds all things together. The mind may try to grasp the logic behind the order of the world, to comprehend the source of every sunrise, the intricate weave of every living thing, the deep mysteries that govern the turning of seasons. Yet even the brightest intellect must eventually bow to the mystery, recognizing that some truths are too profound for words. This realization does not breed despair or insignificance. Instead, it opens the heart to humility and belonging. To know one's own limits is to find comfort in the knowledge that there is a meaning and purpose reaching far beyond individual worries and ambitions. The beauty of creation, the delicate unfolding of a flower, the thunderous roll of ocean waves, the silent march of mountains, becomes a reminder that the world is held by hands both gentle and mighty. Each detail, from the smallest grain of sand to the sweep of galaxies, reflects a design vast in scale and intimate in care. In the presence of such greatness, the soul is invited to release the burden of needing to control everything. There is relief in knowing that one's story is part of a much larger tapestry, one thread among countless others, each cherished and essential. The anxieties that once dominated the mind soften in the light of this perspective. Troubles shrink beside the realization that the one who created all things is attentive to every heart, mindful of every silent prayer. The beauty of the incomprehensible is that it encourages trust. If the universe is sustained by wisdom deeper than any fear, if the force that spun the stars into their courses is the same that breathes life into the everyday, then true comfort is found not in answers but in relationship. The soul is free to rest, to marvel, to wonder, and to trust that its place in the world is intentional, precious, and secure. There is solace in knowing that one does not have to understand everything to be held in care. The Creator's greatness, too vast for the mind to capture, is the very thing that allows the heart to find rest. Each new question, each moment of awe, is met with gentle reassurance. The one who shaped the universe has not forgotten even the smallest longing or the quietest need. And so the journey continues, not in the pursuit of certainty, but in the embrace of wonder. In the face of mystery, peace grows, a peace that does not depend on understanding, but on the quiet conviction that every life, no matter how small, is seen, valued, and included in a love that spans the heavens. Here, in this humility before greatness, the soul finds its truest comfort, its highest hope, and its rightful place in the order of things. The path of the wise is not always the easiest or the quickest. It requires patience and attention, the willingness to pause and look deeper, to question not only the world, but also one's own motives. Wisdom is less about the accumulation of facts and more about learning to recognize what truly matters. It is the gentle art of discerning when to speak and when to listen, when to hold on and when to let go, when to persist and when to accept. Along this path, mistakes are not final, they are teachers, offering insight for those humble enough to learn. To seek wisdom is to acknowledge that the heart holds its own secrets, often revealed in quiet moments rather than in the noise of daily life. There is a still, small voice within, sometimes drowned out by worry or distraction, but always present, always ready to guide. Listening to this voice requires courage, for it often speaks uncomfortable truths. It asks for honesty, with oneself and with others, and encourages the traveler to act with integrity even when no one is watching. Trusting the heart does not mean following every fleeting feeling, but rather tuning in to a deeper intuition that aligns with kindness, justice, and love. This inner sense, honed by reflection and humility, becomes a trustworthy companion on the journey. It guards against the temptations of shortcuts and easy answers, reminding the soul that what is right is often found in the quiet space between impulse and action. The wise person understands that growth comes from a willingness to be taught, not only by mentors and friends, but by adversity and silence, by beauty, and even by loss. Wisdom invites openness to learning from everyone and everything, for life's most profound lessons often come disguised as everyday moments. Each encounter, each decision, each quiet act of faith shapes the heart, gradually weaving a life of substance and grace. There is a certain mystery in the way wisdom unfolds. Sometimes the right path only becomes clear after the first step has been taken in faith. Other times, what seemed like a detour reveals itself to be the very road that leads to understanding. The heart, when trusted and nurtured, becomes attuned to the gentle guidance that cannot always be explained, but can always be felt. To walk the path of wisdom is to live with both humility and hope, to admit that one does not have all the answers, but to trust that the way will be made clear in due time. It is to seek counsel, to weigh choices thoughtfully, and to move forward with the quiet assurance that every sincere effort to do good adds light to the journey. The heart, open to wisdom and alert to its own depths, discovers not only how to travel well, but how to become a source of light for others walking their own paths. There is a quiet, transforming power in realizing that the light found on the journey is not meant to be kept for oneself alone. Every moment of comfort received, every lesson learned, every measure of peace discovered becomes, in time, a source of hope for others still searching. Like the dawn spreading gently across the land, light travels not by force, but by reflection, moving from one heart to another, illuminating even the darkest corners with the simple act of being present. The call to be a light for others is both a privilege and a responsibility. It does not require grand gestures or heroic sacrifices. Often it begins with the smallest acts, listening with patience when another's voice falters, offering encouragement when hope is thin, standing alongside someone whose burden feels too heavy to carry alone. Sometimes it is as simple as a warm smile, a kind word, or a silent prayer for a stranger's peace. These gestures, though easily overlooked, can change the course of a day, and sometimes even a life. Stories of compassion and service are woven through every community, each one a testament to the ripple effect of kindness. There are those who give without expecting anything in return, whose hands reach out not because it is convenient, but because they know what it means to be in need. Some have opened their homes to the lonely, others have shared food with the hungry, while many more have offered time and understanding when there was nothing else to give. Each act, no matter how small, adds to the growing brightness that dispels despair. In sharing light, there is joy, not the fleeting pleasure of recognition, but the deep, sustaining satisfaction that comes from seeing another's burdens lifted, if only for a moment. To witness hope rekindled in a weary eye, or a smile returned to someone who has forgotten how to laugh, is to know the true measure of giving. The reward is not in applause, but in the knowledge that life has become a little warmer, a little more welcoming, because someone cared enough to share what they had. Being a source of light is not always easy. There are times when one's own flame feels weak, when shadows threaten to smother the spirit. Yet it is often in these moments, when strength is shared in spite of weakness, that the greatest impact is made. Light does not need to be blinding. Even the smallest spark can guide the way when the night is thick. In the gentle exchange of care, both giver and receiver are transformed. The act of helping another becomes the very thing that restores the giver's own hope. To live with the intention of reflecting light is to recognize the interconnectedness of every life. No one walks the path alone, and the responsibility to care extends beyond personal comfort to the well-being of others. This sense of shared journey invites generosity, understanding, and forgiveness, allowing communities to flourish and grow strong. Ultimately, the greatest legacy one can leave is not found in achievements or possessions, but in the ways they have brightened the lives of those around them. The light given away is never lost. It multiplies, returning in unexpected moments and places. And so the call remains, to live with open hands and a willing heart, to let the light that has been received shine outward, guiding others safely home. In this way, every life, no matter how small, becomes part of a larger story, a story in which darkness is always met by the unwavering glow of shared hope. The path of faith is not a straight, sunlit road without obstacles or questions. Instead, it winds through fog and shadow, over rocky ground and uncertain crossings, always marked by moments of questioning and seasons of trial. Doubt, contrary to what many believe, is not an enemy of faith, but a companion along the way, a signal that the journey is real, that the heart is searching, and that belief is alive, stretching and growing with every challenge encountered. There are days when assurance seems effortless, when hope feels as natural as breathing, and the world appears rich with promise. But inevitably, the storms come. Trials arise, unexpected losses, disappointments, unanswered prayers, and suddenly what felt certain becomes blurred by uncertainty. In these times, faith is tested not in theory, but in the raw experience of confusion and pain. The old answers may not fit the new questions, and the comfortable routines of belief are disrupted by the ache of not knowing. During such storms, doubt may seem overwhelming. It creeps in quietly, asking if the journey matters, if the hope that once seemed so solid was only an illusion. The mind circles through what-ifs and if-onlys, while the heart grows heavy with the weight of silence or delay. It is tempting to believe that the presence of these questions means faith is failing, but in truth, faith is most genuine when it is chosen despite uncertainty. To keep believing in the middle of doubt is an act of quiet defiance, a choice to trust not because the evidence is always clear, but because the heart remembers the light glimpsed in earlier days. Faith does not always roar. Sometimes it is simply a whisper, "I will go on." It is the willingness to sit in the ambiguity, to wait for clarity, to keep moving forward even when the path cannot be seen. Sometimes this means clinging to the smallest fragments of hope, trusting that the dawn will come as it has before. In this process, something beautiful happens. Faith deepens, no longer dependent on feelings or easy answers, but grounded in something more lasting, a relationship, a conviction, a memory of past mercies. The heart learns to accept its own questions, to bring them honestly to the surface, trusting that even doubts can be held and healed. This vulnerability becomes a source of strength, not a liability, because it opens the door to grace, patience, and a new kind of understanding. There is comfort in realizing that every traveler faces such storms. The stories of those who have gone before are filled with struggles, nights of wrestling, and seasons of silence. Yet through it all, faith remains, not as a rigid certainty, but as a living trust that endures through both joy and sorrow. The willingness to keep believing, to keep hoping, is itself an act of courage, shaping the soul and preparing it for new depths of wisdom and compassion. Ultimately, faith through doubt is not about the absence of questions, but about the perseverance to keep walking. It is the quiet strength to say yes, even when everything inside wants to say no. It is the decision to wait for the dawn, trusting that light and clarity will return. And when that moment comes, the heart is not only comforted, but transformed, wiser, humbler, and more ready to meet whatever comes next, with hope still intact. There is a rare and subtle power in silence, a kind of quiet that goes far beyond the mere absence of noise. It is a space where the demands of the world fade and the constant stream of thoughts slows to a gentle ripple. In this silence, a door opens to oneself, to truth, and to the presence that so often waits patiently beneath the surface of daily life. The journey inward is not always easy, but it is in these moments of intentional stillness that the deepest answers are often found. The practice of prayer or inner dialogue is less about elaborate words or perfect rituals, and more about an honest encounter with the soul's own longing. It begins with a willingness to pause, to set aside distractions, and to simply be present. At first, the mind may resist, throwing up lists and worries, replaying conversations and unfinished tasks. But with patience, the noise begins to settle, and a gentle awareness grows. The awareness that beneath the chatter, there is a voice that is steady, wise, and kind. This inner voice is rarely loud. It speaks in impressions, in feelings, in the quiet assurance that guides when logic alone fails. Sometimes it brings comfort, sometimes challenge, but always it invites honesty. The invitation is not to escape the world, but to engage it more fully, equipped with the clarity and strength that only come from within. The heart, when listened to with care, reveals what it truly needs, what it fears, and what it hopes for. Learning to dwell in silence is a skill that deepens with practice. The world is full of distractions, screens and schedules, the constant hum of obligation. But silence carves out a sanctuary where real listening becomes possible. Here, prayer can become a conversation rather than a monologue, a dialogue where one speaks and also listens, trusting that answers may come, not all at once, but in gentle, unfolding ways. It is in this quiet that self-awareness blossoms. Patterns emerge, motives are revealed, and the tangled threads of worry begin to loosen. The questions that press so urgently in the noisy hours of the day find their context in the soft light of reflection. What am I truly longing for? What is the next right step? The answers may not always be what is expected, but they are honest, rooted in a truth that is both personal and profound. In the silence, there is space for hope to grow, for wounds to begin healing, for forgiveness to take root. The inner voice, shaped by grace and by experience, becomes a trusted guide, offering perspective and patience when the way ahead is unclear. Over time, the habit of listening grows easier, and the temptation to fill every moment with sound and distraction gives way to an appreciation for the depth and richness that only quiet can offer. Ultimately, the art of seeking answers within is not a rejection of the world, but a way of returning to it stronger, clearer, and more compassionate. The stillness found in prayer and reflection becomes the well from which wisdom is drawn, the sanctuary where courage is restored. Here, in the gentle hush of inner quiet, the soul learns that it is never truly alone, and that every answer worth finding begins with a willingness to listen. At the heart of every journey, beneath every struggle and triumph, there is a single force that holds everything together: love. Unlike fleeting emotions or passing infatuations, true love is a presence that endures through storms and sunlight alike. It is the deep current that flows beneath all human experience, quietly sustaining, mending, and drawing people closer even when the world tries to pull them apart. Love is more than a feeling, it is an act of will, a daily choice. It is seen in moments of patience when tempers grow short, in the gentle touch that reassures a trembling hand, in the quiet willingness to forgive when words have wounded. Love is the courage to stand with another in their darkest hour, not for recognition or reward, but simply because the heart cannot do otherwise. It binds together families, communities, strangers and friends, weaving a tapestry of connection that strengthens with every act of kindness and mercy. Acceptance is love's open door. It does not judge by appearance, success, or history, but sees each soul for what it is, unique, imperfect, and infinitely valuable. In the presence of genuine acceptance, people find freedom to be themselves, to shed their masks, and to rest in the assurance that they are welcome just as they are. There is healing in this embrace, a quiet affirmation that no one is beyond the reach of compassion and that everyone belongs. Forgiveness is the work of love in action. It is the refusal to let past wounds dictate the future, the decision to lay down resentment and let go of bitterness. Forgiveness does not ignore pain or pretend that harm never happened. Instead, it chooses to move forward, making space for healing and new beginnings. Through forgiveness, love proves its resilience, its capacity to overcome even the deepest divisions. Unity is the fruit that love bears. It is the sense of togetherness that arises when hearts are open, when differences are honored but not allowed to divide. In unity, people discover the strength that comes from belonging to something greater than themselves, a community, a cause, a shared hope. True unity is not the erasure of individuality, but the harmony that comes when each person brings their light and joins it with others. In a world that often seems fractured and uncertain, love stands as the one enduring promise. It bridges gaps, mends broken places, and restores faith when it has grown thin. It is the gentle voice that whispers hope in despair, and the steady hand that lifts the weary from the ground. Every story of redemption, every act of generosity, every quiet moment of understanding is born from love's wellspring. To live from this place is to participate in something eternal. Love outlasts failure, outshines doubt, and remains when all else fades away. It is the foundation upon which all goodness rests, the silent force that gives meaning to the journey and purpose to every step. In love, there's the invitation to become more than oneself, to reach outward, to forgive, to embrace, and to heal. And in answering that invitation, the world itself is transformed, one heart at a time. Strength in its truest form is seldom loud or attention-seeking. It grows quietly, often in places marked by struggle and humility, where expectations of victory seem least likely. It is here, in the soil of vulnerability and the willingness to accept help, that a deeper, more lasting power is born, a power shaped not by dominance, but by the gentle resilience of the humble heart. Humility is not self-doubt or timidity. It is the clear-eyed recognition of one's limitations and needs. It does not diminish the self, but anchors it in honesty. To be humble is to stand without pretense, to admit the truth of weakness, and to trust that worth is not measured by flawless strength, but by the courage to keep going in spite of difficulty. This honesty opens the door for support, inviting faith and compassion to fill what is lacking. In moments when all outward resources are spent, when the mind is tired and the heart aches, faith steps quietly into the gap. It offers a different kind of confidence, not in the ability to control every circumstance, but in the assurance that one does not walk alone. The humble discover a surprising truth. When they surrender the need to appear invincible, they make room for a strength not their own, a strength that rises up just when it is most needed. Those who have known vulnerability, who have felt the sting of defeat or the emptiness of waiting, are often the first to reach out to others in compassion. Their empathy is forged in the fires of their own hardship. Their gentleness is a testament to all they have endured and overcome. Paradoxically, it is their openness about struggle that inspires others, showing that greatness is not in never falling, but in rising with grace and perseverance. Victory, in this new light, is not measured by loud triumphs, but by the quiet persistence to stand up, to hope, and to love when giving up would be easier. It is found in the humble acts, a word of encouragement shared from one who has also been afraid, a hand extended by someone who once needed rescue, a simple, steadfast faith that refuses to be extinguished by disappointment. Each of these small victories becomes a foundation for others, a reminder that no one is too weak to be strong, and no story is too broken to be redeemed. This strength born of humility and faith does not vanish when the next storm arrives. Instead, it endures, adapting, growing more compassionate and wise with every challenge faced. The humble do not claim greatness for themselves, but in their quiet resilience, they become pillars for others to lean on. Their very presence is proof that true power is not about domination or acclaim, but about the steady, unwavering resolve to continue, to believe, and to care. As the journey unfolds, the strength of the humble becomes a beacon, a source of hope for all who have ever doubted their own ability to endure. In the end, the victory of the meek is not a conquest over others, but the triumph of the Spirit, the realization that grace is given to the lowly, that the last can become first, and that those who dare to be vulnerable are, in the eyes of faith, the strongest of all. Imagine a world entirely renewed, a place where the air itself carries a promise of peace, where the shadows of old sorrows have been swept away, and every corner shines with the gentle warmth of belonging. In this new earth, suffering and fear have become distant memories, replaced by an unbroken sense of safety that allows each heart to rest, and every spirit to rise without hesitation. In this dream, pain and injustice hold no power. No one is ever left behind or overlooked, for here every person is cherished, each story honored. Streets are filled not with rushing and worry, but with laughter, conversation, and the steady rhythm of contentment. Homes are open, light spills through windows, and hospitality is as natural as breathing. There is no need for locks or guards, for trust forms the very foundation of this place, and every face is met with kindness. Differences, once the source of division, now add beauty to the mosaic of community. Here, diversity is celebrated. Each culture, language, and tradition blending into a tapestry that reflects the endless creativity of life itself. There is no fear of being misunderstood, no anxiety about finding one's place, for everyone is welcome, and every heart finds its home. It is a world where compassion is the guiding principle, and where forgiveness is freely given and received. Nature flourishes in this new land. Gardens bloom in abundance. Rivers run clear, and the earth yields its gifts without strain. The relationship between people and creation is marked by care and respect, as gratitude for the world's beauty becomes a daily song. Children play in safety, elders are honored, and no voice goes unheard. Every person, from the youngest to the oldest, carries the dignity of being seen and valued. Hope is not a fragile wish, but the air everyone breathes. The wounds of the past, though remembered, have healed, replaced by stories of resilience and transformation. Memories of loss give way to gratitude for restoration. Instead of regret, there is wisdom. Instead of bitterness, a gentle grace. Every day begins with the confidence that good will prevail, and ends with peace untroubled by anxiety or regret. There is work to be done in this new world, but it is not toil born of necessity or fear. Rather, it is purposeful, joyful, the kind of work that brings fulfillment and allows each gift and talent to blossom. People labor together not in competition, but in partnership, drawing out the best in one another. Achievement is measured not by status or wealth, but by the flourishing of life in every form. At the heart of this perfect world is a sense of unity that transcends every barrier. The bonds of community are unbreakable, woven from shared hope and mutual care. No one is a stranger. No one is alone. Evenings are marked by music and celebration, and mornings by gratitude for another day in a world where love has the final word. This vision of a new earth is not just a distant dream, but an invitation to believe that such a world is possible, a place where every longing is fulfilled, every sorrow comforted, and every hope realized. It is a world shaped by compassion, secured by justice, and sustained by a peace that nothing can disturb. And in this home, every heart discovers not only where it belongs, but who it was always meant to be. To be invited into a day of true rest is to be welcomed into a space that stands in gentle contrast to the world's relentless pace. It is an invitation not merely to pause, but to surrender, to let go of every burden, every plan, every restless attempt to control what tomorrow may bring. The promise of genuine rest beckons with the quiet assurance that here, for once, striving can cease, and the soul can settle into a peace not earned but freely given. Yet, for many, accepting such an invitation feels anything but simple. There is a part of the human heart that clings tightly to responsibility, rehearsing worries about what must be done, what could go wrong, or what the future might demand. Control becomes a kind of shield, a way to ward off anxiety and disguise uncertainty. Even the thought of letting go can stir resistance, an uneasy sense that, without vigilance, everything will unravel. This tension is rooted in deep fears: fear of the unknown, fear of losing ground, fear of being unprepared for what lies ahead. The world often teaches that value comes from constant activity, that to rest is to risk falling behind. The mind spins with questions: what if I stop and something is missed? What if I trust and am disappointed? Until the very idea of peace seems distant, reserved for someone else. And yet, beneath these fears, the longing for rest remains, a quiet, persistent desire to find the kind of peace that does not depend on circumstances or outcomes. To enter true rest is to face these fears honestly, to acknowledge the limits of control, and to trust that life is held by hands larger than one's own. It is to accept that every person carries uncertainty, and that the future, no matter how carefully planned, will always be a mix of surprise and grace. The journey into rest begins with honesty, with naming the anxiety, admitting the weariness, and recognizing the futility of endless striving. In this openness, a new kind of strength is born, the strength to trust, to release what cannot be controlled, and to lean into a peace that is both gift and promise. It is not a one-time decision, but a daily choice to step away from worry and into the embrace of stillness. Within this space, the heart discovers that rest is not emptiness, but fullness. It is the richness of being accepted without condition, the relief of knowing that worth is not measured by productivity or perfection. Here, one finds the freedom to breathe, to reflect, to simply be. The pressures of performance fade, and the spirit is restored by a quiet confidence that there is enough time, enough care, enough hope for whatever may come. Accepting the invitation to rest is an act of courage. It means trusting that the world will continue spinning, that the future will unfold as it should, and that peace can be found even in uncertainty. It means laying down the tools of self-protection and picking up, instead, the simple trust that each day holds its own grace. This rest is not escapism. It does not ignore the challenges ahead, nor does it promise that everything will be easy. But it offers a place to return, a wellspring of calm that renews the heart and steadies the mind. In this rest, there is clarity, healing, and the quiet assurance that, no matter what the future holds, one is not alone. It is a peace that waits patiently, inviting every weary soul to come and discover what it truly means to be at home. At the edge of every journey, when the long road narrows into silence and the noise of striving falls away, there remains a gentle mystery, a promise that the story is not ending but transforming into something deeper and more enduring. This is the threshold of eternity, where every hope, every lesson, every quiet act of faith gathers into a new beginning. It is here, in the embrace of what cannot be measured or fully understood, that the soul finds its truest meaning. Faith, when lived sincerely, does more than shape thoughts or actions. It transforms the very core of a person. Through seasons of doubt and joy, through darkness and light, it refines and deepens, teaching the heart to trust in what is unseen. Each step taken in faith, every surrender of control, every act of forgiveness or kindness becomes a thread woven into a tapestry that stretches beyond the boundaries of time. The person who once feared the unknown now finds courage in hope, a hope not bound by circumstance, but anchored in the conviction that life's purpose reaches beyond what the eyes can see. The promise of eternity is not simply the lengthening of days, but the fulfillment of longing. It is the assurance that nothing truly good is ever lost, that every sorrow will be comforted, and every injustice made right. In this new reality, freedom is not the absence of limits, but the liberation from fear, regret, and isolation. The soul, having traveled through trial and wonder, finally comes to rest, not in passivity, but in a living, unbreakable peace. Faith, when lived sincerely, does more than shape thoughts or actions. It transforms the very core of a person. Through seasons of doubt and joy, through darkness and light, it refines and deepens, teaching the heart to trust in what is unseen. Each step taken in faith, every surrender of control, every act of forgiveness or kindness becomes a thread woven into a tapestry that stretches beyond the boundaries of time. The person who once feared the unknown now finds courage in hope, a hope not bound by circumstance, but anchored in the conviction that life's purpose reaches beyond what the eyes can see. The promise of eternity is not simply the lengthening of days, but the fulfillment of longing. It is the assurance that nothing truly good is ever lost, that every sorrow will be comforted, and every injustice made right. In this new reality, freedom is not the absence of limits, but the liberation from fear, regret, and isolation. The soul, having traveled through trial and wonder, finally comes to rest, not in passivity, but in a living, unbreakable peace. Transformation unfolds quietly at first. Old burdens fall away, replaced by lightness and clarity. Where there was once striving for approval or security, there is now a confidence rooted in being fully known and loved. The search for meaning ends, not in resignation, but in discovery, a realization that the heart's deepest desires are answered not by achievement, but by relationship and belonging. Hope for eternal life becomes the lens through which the present is understood. Even as days pass, each one carries the fragrance of forever, a reminder that the story continues, that love outlasts every hardship, and that every act of faith echoes on. The ordinary becomes sacred, and moments that once seemed small are revealed to have eternal significance. In the quiet of this understanding, fear loosens its hold. Freedom emerges, not as a fleeting feeling, but as a lasting reality. The soul stands tall, unafraid, ready to greet whatever lies ahead. Rest is found not in escape, but in the gentle certainty that all is held together, that the journey has meaning, and that the destination is more beautiful than could ever be imagined. So the traveler's heart is at peace. Having walked the winding path, through shadow and sunlight, through doubt and belief, it stands at the threshold of eternity with gratitude, hope, and the quiet joy of one who has discovered the fullness of life. The story continues, unending, as faith blossoms into freedom and hope finds its everlasting home.